Hi, folks. Thanks for tuning in one more time. So far in these videos, we've talked about dialogue as something that you can do with a group in class. You've just shown a controversial video, and so you want to have a dialogue about it. Or maybe your students have attended one of your convos with a provocative speaker, and now you want to hold a dialogue. But dialogue is not just something that you do. It is also an ethical ideal for communication. Just think about these qualities of meeting each other as equals, seeking to understand, not to persuade. It's withholding judgment and listening with empathy. We might want all of our communication to be a little more dialogic. So I've been thinking about how you can promote a culture of dialogic communication at Brebeuf. And I think one good answer is to work on dialogic listening. Because when I listen to understand, I'm not in debate mode and I'm not trying to fix a problem. What I'm really doing is I'm listening not just to the words you say, but I'm listening for the music behind the words. I'm listening to hear what you're trying to say. And, I recently led a retreat for our medical school, whole day just on listening. And they said, listening is the most important part of our job. I agree. Funny thing about listening, though, it's not like public speaking. Like, everybody thinks that they're terrible at public speaking. Public speaking is like golf that way. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm just horrible." Listening though, everybody thinks they're a good listener. Listening's more like sex. People say, "Oh yeah, I do it all the time, and I'm great at it." Well, when I teach listening, I think that I've learned that one of the great keys to being a good listener is simply making the decision that right now I'm going to be an active, empathetic listener. And that's the first step of listening, is that I have to physically attend to the other person. So if you come into my office and you're like, "Hey, Dr. George, you got a minute?" And I'm busy working at the computer. If I just kind of look up like this and say, "Yeah, what's up?" my attention is divided. I'm not physically attending. But if I take my notes and set them aside, and then I scooch my chair over so I'm not in front of the computer, and now I've got nothing in front of me and nothing in my hands, and I just look up and say, "Sure, what's up?" Now I'm physically attending. Now I'm really listening. The hard part is that I also, at the same time that I'm clearing my desk, need to clear my mind. And when I say clear the mind, I don't mean just like access a blank slate, because it would be more accurate to say, I want to become aware of the hot mess that's going on up here. So I was working on this email, and it was really stressful because it was a hard to write email about a conflict. So I'm going to look at the screen and decide, you know what, I can finish that later. Or maybe we've got a meeting that we planned for 3 o'clock and there's some conflict or some reason to be anxious about it. I'm going to become aware of that so that I can make the choice not to be driven by that, but instead to go in listening to understand. That's dialogic listening, and it helps us have richer conversations. I'll offer one piece of advice, and that is to be curious. Be curious. When I'm curious, then I'm going to ask lots of good questions. And I'm going to be in dialogue mode, not trying to debate or trying to solve the problem. When I'm curious, I'm going to want to get to know what you're thinking and what you're feeling, you know? And if I'm curious, then I might be more likely to listen with resilience. And incidentally, that's something I've started adding to my guidelines for dialogue. To listen with resilience is to listen anticipating that you're going to say some things that I really don't like and might even hurt me. But I'm going to push through that. If I'm curious, that's really what I need to be a good listener. But you want another tip, so here's one more. And I'm indebted to this to Jeff Hanna, who's a professor over in our education school. Don't ask why. You see, when I ask the question why do you think that? That invites you to make an argument and explain why and kind of prove yourself. Suppose I ask instead, I hear you saying this. I wonder, where does that come from for you? Well, where does that come from for you? Well, that's a different kind of question. It's a much more interesting question. And, to harken back to William Isaacs, it's the kind of question that says, let's talk about, this is your thought. Let's talk about the factory that made that thought. So, listening is not rocket science. And to a certain extent, we do it all the time, and we are good at it. I encourage you to just make the conscious choice, whether it's with a student after class or in your next committee meeting, to be a dialogic listener, and so nurture a dialogic culture of communication. A lot of institutions complain. They say, we need to work on our communication. This is a great way to do that. In our last video, I'm going to talk a little bit about safe spaces and brave spaces and what that could mean for a dialogic culture at Brebeuf.